Well, hello there again from the great state of North Carolina. This is DVD 5 of 5, or part 5 of 5 of A Job and The Job. Of course, by now, you know I'm Jeff Cloud, Crossroads Reentry Ministries. Phone number there. Give us a call when you get out. Post Office Box 861, Huntersville, North Carolina 28070. What I want to do a little bit more in the introduction here today is describe to you what you can get when you call us. Now, particularly when you call this number 704-499-1332 in context of a job, we have a 3-page document that basically works for people with records to get jobs. And the way to think about it is that 3-page document has our major tools to get a job, many of them that we've talked about in these DVDs, part 1 through 4. So give a call when you get out, 704-499-1332. The year now these DVDs are being made is 2014. I don't know what year you may be watching them. That may be my personal phone number still, or it could be our Ministries phone number as well too. So just realize when you call, you might get me, you might get an assistant, whomever that might be in the future. But I kind of see that coming down the year because we got several hundred calls last year. And of course, I teach in jails and prisons, and will probably become very instrumental in trying to get these DVDs out nationwide. But give us a call. Say, hey, I'm looking for a job. I'm in Seattle, Washington, or wherever it may be. Even though we're in North Carolina, other side of the country, that job document will work anywhere to help people with records get a job. And of course, the way to think about it is this. We call it you're fishing for a job. We teach you how to go fishing for a job and how to fish many ponds, get many corks out at one time. And of course, if a man goes out and puts 200 corks, baited, hooked, etc., into one pond, he's got a way quicker chance of getting the fish than he does if he just sits out there and fishes with one rod and reel. So, give us a call when you get out, 704-499-1332. Now, what I'd like to do today is this, of course, is our DVD, A Job and The Job, part 5 of 5. So this is the last one in the A Job and The Job track. Now, of course, we got other tracks, for example, sobriety. I think we got 8 DVDs on that one. And then reentry, to help people re-enter society after being incarcerated. And there's 4 DVDs on that one. You may be seeing only the job, A Job and The Job track, these 5 DVDs, or you may be seeing the entire set or some combination of 2 of the 3. But no matter what, we're finishing up today on this DVD with A Job and The Job part 5. I've already introduced you to me, and of course Crossroads Reentry Ministries exists for no other reason than to help people leave behind the lifestyle of incarceration, and we do that by helping with any God-honored need, other than the big L, which is legal because we're not lawyers. But other than that, any God-honored need that someone has when they get out to leave behind the incarceration lifestyle. I want to quickly review our major tools that we got in DVDs part 1 through 4. So the first 4 DVDs of A Job and The Job, I just want to go back over you quickly and review the major tools that we talked about. Back in DVD, the part 1, one of the major tools we gave you was our 5-step process for getting a job that works for people with records. That was one major tool. In part 2, we talked about getting connected with the Association of General Contractors. A major tool. Like I said then, 80% of people, men in incarceration facilities whom I deal with have construction experience, so that is a major tool to go after their jobs in the future. Third major tool we talked about altogether, use the local yellow pages in conjunction with Google. Use the local yellow pages in conjunction with Google. We did that in DVD Part 2 or DVD 2 of A Job, D Job. In DVD, the third DVD on A Job, D Job, we looked in depth at a skills resume. That's a fourth major tool. And of course the skills resume, you don't have to do chronological, so there's not that big glaring gap of our incarceration time. We talked about another major tool, a fifth one I believe, in A Job and D Job Part 3, which was the box and what to do with it. That box that typically will say something like, have you ever been convicted of a felony, or have you ever been arrested, convicted of anything other than a minor traffic offense, etc., so on and so forth. Check yes or no. Usually it's got a box around it, and of course we talked about what to do in that. We talked about a major tool in Part 3 as well, called the crack house question. The crack house question, wow, we don't hear that from other people that teach us how to get jobs, of course. At Crossroads, we believe we've been down the lifestyle in the past, and we have, quote unquote, walked in a lifestyle that God wants us to now. Therefore, we try to get real, we try to get practical, and the crack house question definitely is one. So I believe that's 6 major tools that we had through Part 3. In Part 4, we talked about 3 more major tools. Typical interview questions to be prepared for, like tell me about yourself. What are your strong points? What are your weak points? Etc., so on and so forth. We also gave another major tool in Part 4, FLOWER, which was an acronym for how do we do in job interviews. And not only could that acronym help us in job interviews, it can help us in all of our life relationships. FLOWER, of course, F was face, L was lean, O was open posture, W was watch our distance, E was eye contact, R was relax. And then we concluded in Part 4, of course, with sales is sales, and talked about, for example, we've got many skills in that old life that we use for an enemy. If we'll use these same skills God's way, really the skills are transferable. We took, for example, a crack salesman and how he could become a car salesman. A lot of the same skills, good people skills, knows his product, a good communicator, he convinces people to buy his product. You see how all those can transfer from crack salesman to selling Hyundai Accents or whatever the case may be. So there you got it. That's the first 4 parts reviewed. Now, I want to go into today, since if you think about it, our first 4 parts on A Job and D Job focus primarily on getting a job. Okay, getting a job. But we don't want to leave you with simply an A job, and here's why. Many people work at a job or a series of A jobs their entire career. Now, a job, of course, is one that just puts money in the pocket, but the person would rather be anywhere else. Now, many people work their entire life. Let's make it 20 to 65. They've gone through their entire life. They've worked either a job or a bunch of A jobs, and they look back and they go, what the blue Hades was that all about? In other words, it didn't fulfill them. It was just putting money in, yes, paying the bills, etc., so on and so forth. But the truth of the matter is they never walked into the job, because if they do, the job fulfills a person. The job fulfills a person. The definition, of course, a job simply puts money in the pocket. The job I define is this way. It's the one we would do for free. It's also the one that God calls us to. And we're going to unpack that today in this 5th of 5 DVDs on A Job and The Job. Now, A Job and The Job I've defined. What I'd like to say is this. We realize when you get out of jail or prison, you may need a job or a series of A jobs, probably for a few years. Now, what is a few years? That might be 2, that might be 12. But a few years, you're going to have to work a job coming out of jail or prison, or a series of A jobs to put money in your pocket, pay the bills, take care of yourself, maybe take care of others, could be family, children, etc. but you're going to need that money, quote unquote, to take care of yourself and other people as well too, or else that old lifestyle is going to be begging you to come back into it. Might be slinging dope, whatever the case is, but of course that old lifestyle is always going to lead to one of three places: jails, institutions, or death. Jails, institutions, or death. But here's basically what goes on. We want to look at the job and point you to the job. Now, the job, the first thing I try to share with people is what came true in my life. Now, what I mean by that is Jeff Cloud, more than 20 years ago, had a couple of dozen arrests. He got sober in late 1993. He got saved in early 1994. So this is 2014 when this DVD's been shot. I've been walking in sobriety and walking in God's way. Not perfect, but generally God's path. I didn't care about God's path prior to 20 years before at all. But what happened is, of course, through this broken life and then getting saved and getting sober, when I was first sober, I started serving, if you will, by doing AA meetings in a local prison here, all the way back in 1994, first year of sobriety. And I started seeing some things. People getting out of jails and prisons, and they didn't have all of these pieces to put together to have a life that basically set them up for success. I started seeing those things. Now, what went on, of course, was I knew in my first, definitely by my second year of sobriety, that I would be teaching groups of people how to walk God's way. And I knew this in my spirit all the way back in, say, 1995, 96-ish, 94-ish, all that kind of thing. But I'm sitting there, okay, God, I'm ready to go. Teach all these people, teach all these groups of men, teach women, teach youth, whatever, to help them leave behind the old incarceration lifestyle. And it didn't happen back then, per se. Not at the context that it has now, starting a ministry back in 2007. But basically, it went like this. I have to realize, looking back, and I have to share with you this. We are people of the microwave, and God is a God of the oven. I'm going to say it another way. God is a God of the oven, and we are people of the microwave. Very important. Those of you that have been professional cooks, or you've done any professional cooking, especially if you've done a cake, you don't bring a cake out in a great restaurant that came out of a microwave. It ain't going to happen. And any cook will affirm that. Great cakes are made in an oven. The reason being is they need the time to bake. And that's the same way our lives are. I'll give you an example why God didn't have me out in front of people teaching them my first or second year of sobriety. There'd have been many things that came out of my mouth that would have been destructive for other people as well as me. Now, what God knew was there was going to be some time spent in different ways doing this type of service or that type of service to prepare me for what He was calling me to do in the job. For example, Crossroads Reentry Ministries didn't start as legally as a 501c3 charitable organization, because you had to found with the feds to be a 501c3 charitable organization. Salvation Army, it doesn't matter who it is, Goodwill, Crossroads Reentry Ministries. You have to found with the feds, and we did that in 2007. Now, if you catch the numbers, 1993, I get sober. 2007, I am launching Crossroads officially as an organization. That's about 2007 minus 1993, about 14 years. And of course, since 2007, this is 2014, we've been 501c3 for about 7 years. But I really consider myself maybe in the last 10 years walking in the job, where the whole purpose was of my life is to help people leave behind that lifestyle of incarceration, addiction, alcoholism, all the rest of the stuff that goes with it, so that they can find the freedom that God wants. But it's key to remember God is a God of the oven, and we are people of the microwave, because we're going to expect in our human nature, this needs to unfold quickly, just like I was first, second year sobriety. Okay, God, I'm ready. I need to be speaking to all these people. I know in my spirit you're calling me to. And God knew I wasn't ready. That would have been coming out of the microwave. He knew that there needed to be some oven time. So the point of all that is, let's give God some time to do what only He can do. And that is change us into the person who can walk into the calling He has for us. Okay? But it's very key to understand that we have to be patient, because God's timing is perfect. We humans, we butcher it badly. Okay? So I want you to remember that. God is a God of the oven, and we are people of the microwave. That's going to be very important to realize. You might be out there for several years in a job, but there's going to be things happening if you're walking God's way, that you're going to be moving towards the job. And you're going to be patient with Him, because when you do, amazing things come to unfold in one's life. Now, what I want to do is I want to give you a simple acronym. Acronym's a big fancy word for the first letter of each word, and you take each of those first letters and you make an acronym. And I want to talk about an acronym today that will help you or anyone else walk into the job. Walk into the job. And that acronym is this: PETN. Kind of like pet, which could be a cat or a dog, and then tack N onto the end of it. PETN. And we're going to look at each one of those breaking down here in a minute. We're going to look at each one of those broken down here in a minute. Now, what we encourage you to do is this: get out there and get into your A job or your series of A jobs, and through prayer and meditation, and maybe even talking to those who you really respect, who are doing life fairly successfully, you may even converse with them and ask some of these things. We pray to God. We ask about some of these letters in the acronym. We talk to others who may know us, who are successful in life, because many times they can see things that we don't. And here's the kind of things that we're going to be looking at through prayer, meditation, conversation with others who know us well, who are successful in life, to find the job. Here's what it boils down to. We explore the P as in passions. P as in passions. What God-honored passions do you have in your life, or have you even had in the past, that God would honor? Let me explain what I mean by that. Jeff Cloud has a passion to help people leave behind the incarceration lifestyle. Do you think God honors that? You better believe it. I am one blessed man. Now, what's interesting is, most people, when they work in an organization, they get money off the people who they provide products for. I've never been paid, to my knowledge, 1 cent by thousands, probably tens of thousands of people in jails, prisons, and coming out of jails and prisons. And that's okay. Here's why. God's got a million ways to pay somebody, and that's probably putting a light number on it. He's got a million ways to pay somebody. So He takes care of me in all kinds of ways: financially, family, blessings, spirit, help, you name it. I am one blessed man. But I do know this: God honors me because He called me, and this is the job I have. This is the job I have. I would do it for free. As a matter of fact, last year, because of a grant drying up, I did do it for free. My people who are teachers working under me in the organization, they got paid, but I didn't get paid last year by my normal paycheck coming from Crossroads because a major grant dried up. But God had a million ways to pay me, so He took care of me in different ways. Now, what God-honored passions are either in you, or will He birth in you? What God-honored passions. I find it utterly amazing. I look back sometimes at my life at 4 and 5 years old, and I had a passion for people who were oppressed. Now, I came up at 4 or 5 years old with 1964, 1965. There was an oppressed people in the United States of America. I had a passion that something wasn't right with that. I had a passion with that. And what I believe oppressed people in jails and prisons are, it's not necessarily an oppression by man, even though it could be. People that raised us, they didn't do right, or they split, they left, moms, dads, whatever the case may be. There's a lot of that stuff that comes into play. But it becomes an enemy from the spiritual realms, oppression, and people need to find the freedom that God wants them to have in the spiritual realm. And then that'll come play itself out in the physical realm as well too. And that's the kind of passion that God had in me as a little bitty boy, 4 or 5 years old. Another thing was this, 4 or 5 years old, kindergarten. Back in my day, they didn't even have daycare, I don't think. And they sure didn't have preschool, but basically I started kindergarten, and I think they let me go 1 or 2 years kind of thing back then. But anyhow, kindergarten, I used to sit there and stand there, and it would be recess time. And I would sit out on the playground, stand out on the playground, and I would just start babbling syllables as a 5-year-old boy. Just babbling syllables. And the next thing I knew, kids would come up right and left. They would leave the swings, the seesaws, the sandbox, wherever they were playing, they'd come up and they'd stand around me about 15 minutes and they'd just listen to me. Now what's interesting is God was showing me something. Because this was just babbling syllables. There wasn't anything to it, and the kids were enthralled. But what God was doing was He was showing me down in the future, Jeff Cloud, I'm going to give you oratory skills that are going to have people hanging on the words that you speak. And I'm not bragging on me, I'm bragging on what God does through me. Because everything I got, He gave me. If you see anything positive, He gave me. If you see anything negative, you see sin, for example, that's the only thing I can claim. My bads, all right? But my point being this, what God-honored passions do you have? Some men out there have a passion, for example, to help youth not go down the path you've gone down. Would God honor that? You better believe He would. You might be a part of another charitable organization or found your own one day down the line that takes care of that. Some people have passions in fishing. Some people have passions in sports. It might look like this. A man has a passion in sports and a passion to help kids not go down the wrong path, excuse me. And what he might do is found a charitable organization who later gets an old school building. They're wanting to get rid of it because it's too old for the school to keep kids in and have classes anymore. And the school would love to get rid of it for $1 to a good charitable organization. Why $1? Well, they got to sell it for something to legally sell it, $1, so it becomes a sale. The second thing is that they're looking at a charitable organization would be great, especially one who coordinates keeping kids off the street with sporting events. So they can have gym all night long, pool table in the gym where the kids can get off the street and be in a safer environment, a more productive environment. They bring in leaders, men leaders in the community who are successful. Talk to them a little bit, 30 minutes here, 30 minutes there on a Friday night, Saturday night kind of thing. And then they play and have fun the rest of the time in a safe, sober environment, so to speak. Be super powerful. Would God honor that? You better believe He would. You better believe He would. Would the school systems like that? Yes, to help their children, their kids stay out of trouble. Oh, that would be God honored. But you see now, there's passions that you have in you, or God can birth in you. If they're dormant and we don't know what they are yet. We don't know what they are yet. The first month Jeff Cloud was sober, I didn't have a clue. I had passions about people coming out of jail or prison. But about by month 4 or 5, I was starting to see that passion being birthed. And that's a God-honored passion. So the P is this. What passions do you have, or what passions does God want you to have to walk in the job in your life? Now, the way that you can do that, excuse me 1 second, is here's a common legal pad or pad that you got 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. Doesn't matter what the paper is. Many times just get your paper, Pray, lay on your bed, whatever the case is, take your time. Work on this over months or years and let it evolve as time goes on to a degree. What you're doing, you're just jotting down, okay, God, help me to understand the passions that I've had in my life that you would honor. Help me to understand the passions you may want me to be about in the future, so I can kind of head in the right direction, because I want to walk your way. So share with me what those passions are. You'll be surprised what goes on. As you look backwards, maybe you look today, what passions are in today, and you look forward in the future to what God's passions He may want to honor with you. Now, passions are very important. What I'd like to look at next, of course, was P was for passions, but E is for experiences. Experiences. All right? Experiences. What life experiences do you have? They come into play for the job, and here's why. God can use it all from our past. The good, the bad, the ugly. Whoa, Mr. Cloud, wait a minute. I thought we were supposed to just throw away the past. No. If we do, that means in God's economy, it meant nothing. Wasted. God can use it all. And let me explain what I mean by that. Jeff Cloud grew up in, for a lack of a better term, a hellhole. And many of you have grown up in quote-unquote hellholes. A hellhole, here's what I define. Chaos up in the house all the time. For me, all the way back in the 60s, some man that wasn't my daddy in there with my mama, who had gotten away from my daddy when I was a little bitty boy, and they're drunk as skunks and all the hell's breaking loose all night long. I'll just give you a typical night. 3rd grade, no sleep during the night. What happened? This man, I'm hearing back in my bedroom, this man say, "Woman, I'm going to crack your teeth out of your throat." Then I hear, boom, bloop. Sounded to me like he popped her smack in the mouth, knocked her out, maybe killed her. She slumped down and hit the floor in silence for 45 minutes or longer after that. Nothing out of my mom the rest of the night. Then I hear him leave in his car. I'm scared. At 8 years old, I'm going to go out there and find my mama dead. Now, my mom, practicing alcoholic. She had her own demons to battle in her life. She brings in a single man. Here's where it gets even more interesting. This man had killed thousands. You say, whoa, wait a minute, Mr. Cloud, he'd killed thousands? Yes, he'd killed thousands. He was a machine gunner in Korea. The United States, or the Americans, we fought on the side of the South Koreans. We were on the side of the South Koreans. They were fighting against the North Koreans, and on the North Korean side were the Chinese. The Chinese didn't have the weaponry that America had. But basically what they had was a couple million soldiers. America only had about 300,000 or so back then. So they got 10 times roughly the number of soldiers that America's got. And their philosophy was, if we run the Americans out of bullets, we'll club them to death. We'll beat them to death, and that's how we'll get them. And they lined wave after wave of humanity in front of the machine gunners from Korea. Now, this machine gunner did not have to stop killing humanity because he was running out of bullets, because they had a man feeding that 80-pound machine gun bullets, buckets of bullets. He had plenty of buckets. Somebody would bring him the bullets, and they would keep shooting. But the man had to stop killing humanity when the head of the machine gun got so hot it started blistering his cheeks. Now, if you catch this, alcoholic man, alcoholic single mom, alcoholic man killed thousands. You can imagine the demons that were in my house growing up. No sleep, 3rd grade, all through the night, thinking my mama's dead. That's just one little example. And you know the rest of the kind of crap that goes with it. That's what I call growing up in a hellhole. But what I've discovered is, most of the people in jails and prisons don't grow up in the Leave It to Beaver household. For those of you who know the old TV show, Leave It to Beaver, where you got Mr. Beaver and Mrs. Beaver, and they look everything polished, and they're great parents and all that stuff. Vast majority of people in prisons and jails don't grow up in there. So there was an experience that was a hellhole for my childhood. How does God use that? He uses it for me to be able to connect with people who say, wait a minute, this guy right here looks like a middle-class white guy, and he is. He's a middle-class white guy, But man, he came up with some rough stuff. And that experience, if he came up with that and he's gotten to where he is now, I came up with that same type thing. I got hope. I can get there now. And that's how God uses that experience. There's many other experiences I have. Practicing alcoholic 20 plus years, roughly from ages of 11, I'm going to give it, to 33. Now I'm 54, been sober for more than 20 years. So I know a thing or two about getting high, being in bondage, being drunk, blackouts, all that kind of thing. And then I surely know some stuff about getting and staying sober. Now, those are experiences I got, and they come into play with Crossroads Reentry Ministries because we know the vast majority of people in prisons and jails, if they can stay sober, they'll stay out of jail or prison. Just that one thing, all right? Just that one thing, just to be brutally honest. You go back to my case, you look at all those arrests I had back prior to getting sober in 1993, every single one of them was related to alcohol and maybe a minor part with drugs. But every one of them primarily alcohol. I was an alcoholic. You look at that, I get and stay sober, guess what? 0 arrests since then. So our experiences, the good, the bad, the ugly. Don't forget the bad and the ugly. Many people take good experiences. I was a practicing professional civil engineer roughly from 1983 to 2003, so about 20 years. I worked as a professional engineer and did a lot of design on projects. And basically it works like this. You see the end project from the beginning and you put the plans in place to get there. And I use that same experience, if you will, to do things with Crossroads. When we develop curricula, for example, the curricula that's on these DVDs, I had to sit down and think out the entire series of DVDs, all 3 tracks that we're currently going to release here in 2014. What does it look like? How can it go into incarceration facilities? How can we give them a menu? For example, a substance abuse program may only want our sobriety track. Or a course that focuses only in jobs, employment, may want just our A job and D job track. But the point being, by having the experience as an engineer, God's got me strategically located so that I can kind of see the end from the beginning. Same way with founding Crossroads. I get to put a lot of the planning and stuff into play. Now, for you, you have different experiences than I do, even though some may be the same. But my point being this, those major experiences in life, when we walk into the job, God's going to use them all. And that's key. Experiences. You pray to God and you ask Him, what kind of experiences have I had? Good, bad, ugly. And we're talking about the big experiences. And these can come into play to fashion or form the calling or the job that God has for you to walk in. So P was passions. E is experiences. T, I want to talk about talents. Talents. Okay? Now I believe in the last DVD, part 4, we talked a little bit about sales is sales. And what that basically means is a crack salesman who's a real good crack salesman, he's talented as a salesman. That same talent he can use over here walking for God, of course, to sell cars, to make money, to feed his family, and maybe even give to good charities that do work like Crossroads so they can get bigger and do better work. All right? But the point being that he has certain talents that he may have brought from the past. You have talents. God gives everybody talents, no doubt about it. And some people, different talents, of course, from other people. Some people are great artists. If Jeff Cloud drew a stick man up there, you would say, Cloud, what letter is that? I'm not a good artist at all, not a good drawer. But then again, that artist, if you tried to put him up in front of a class of dozens of people in a jail or prison, his heart would be beating through his chest. He wouldn't know what to do, and it would show. Why? That's not his talent, and that's okay. He can reach people with his talent just like an orator like me can reach people with my talent. We can all be used by God to walk into the job He has for us with the talents He's given us. He will never hold us accountable for the talents we don't have, but guaranteed, all talents he gave us, we will be held accountable. And that's very, very important. Very, very important. What are talents? Here's what I mean by talents. Primarily gifts. For example, Jeff Cloud, God's blessed me with good oratory gift, a good oratory gift, or a good oral communication gift. A good gift of composing things, to bring things that may be complicated down to an understandable level. He's blessed me with the gift of teaching, for example. Now, those are talents that I've got that are gifts, but talents aren't limited to gifts, actual gifts that you got, like a good speaker, good artist, a good musician, whatever the case may be. There's a million different talents that God gives, but they're not just limited to the gifts. Here's something else sometimes they're part of. Could be, what stuff do we have? There's some people out there that they're gazillionaires, all right? And they got gazillions of money. Here's what I believe God would want a gazillionaire to do. He would want him to look around and see, let's say that he would want him to look around and see organizations or people who really advance the kingdom efficiently with little money. If he looked at something like Crossroads Reentry Ministries, we served 2,000 people last year on a budget, I believe last year was $25,000. In Mecklenburg County, it's about $30,000 to house one man 1 year in the county jail. Now, if you catch that, we serve 2,000 people for less cost than it costs to house one person in the Mecklenburg County jail for 1 year. If I'm a gazillionaire and I see I got to look for organizations that I'm going to support for kingdom of God work, I'm going to look and say, wow, that is a very efficient investment. I might even come talk to the CEO or the executive director of that organization. Let me get an hour of your time, see what you're doing, where you're headed. And I believe after he talked to me, he'd say, Mr. Cloud, I want to invest some money with you. Now, the interesting part is God's going to hold him accountable for the talent, which in this case happens to be material or money, that he gave him. The guy's either going to be not a kingdom player or he's going to be a kingdom player. And God definitely wants kingdom players. He will judge those who weren't kingdom players with the talents he gave, whatever that might be. Time, talent, treasure. Of course, time is a talent to a degree. Time. How much time do we have? What do we do with our time? What do we do with our time? In society today, I see a lot, for example, of gamers and video people. And I know the enemy loves that. There's nothing wrong with games and videos in balance. But some people are doing it all the time. What are they doing? They're wasting their life, their talent and talents on a silly game. That when we go into eternity, it won't amount to anything. And the enemy loves that. Why? One of his major tools is to distract with the unimportant at the cost of the important. Many of you shaking your head. Yeah, I know what that one's about, Mr. Cloud. Distract with the unimportant at the cost of the important. I know what it's about. That's how he's beat me down in the past. And that's how he still today will try to get me. But with God's strength, I can overcome that. So the P was passions. The E, experiences. The T, talents. But what I'd like to point to next is where it is carried to the higher level. N is needs. Again, P was passions, E was experiences, T was talents, and N is needs. Here's what we mean by that. What are the big needs that are out there? What are the big needs that are out there in society that God wants to fix? And he wants to use us to walk with him to fix those needs. That's really what the job's going to be about. Crossroads Reentry Ministries, Jeff Cloud, question for you. Is there a need out in society for people who are incarcerated to be able to make it on the outside and leave behind their lifestyle incarceration? You better believe that's a huge need. Bigger the need, bigger the job. I'm going to say that again. Bigger the need, bigger the job. I use this as an example. If we could talk to all historians in the United States of America who know history real well, and they know presidents real well, we took a vote. We said you don't get to talk to the other historians, but we want you to vote of all our presidents in what order you think they were the greatest. And there would be, each one would list the presidents. Now we could take all of their list and average them. I'm firmly convinced the greatest president would be picked in the United States of America would be Abraham Lincoln. Why do you say that, Mr. Cloud? Here's why I say that. If we listed also the greatest needs that the United States of America has ever had as a country, I'm firmly convinced there would be 2 of the top 5 that were met during Abraham Lincoln's presidency. What were those 2? Get rid of slavery. Bam, we didn't need second-class citizens in America. That was wrong. God knew that was wrong. Got to get rid of it. Got to get right a wrong, so per se. So get rid of slavery. That's definitely a top 5 need of our country in its entire history. Second one was this: keep the country together. Now here's what I mean by that. Most people don't know it, but Abraham Lincoln was hated by 90% of this country. Here's why. You had a small, maybe 5% of the South were slave owners. They didn't want him to get in and get rid of slavery. They lose their slaves. Then the other people in the South realized, hey, if he gets in and gets rid of the slaves, we're going to be the ones that got to do the grunt work, like going and picking the cotton out in the fields. So they didn't want Abraham Lincoln up in the house as president after, quote unquote, he got in and what he was doing. The people in the North couldn't understand, and they didn't like Lincoln, because here's this Lincoln, when the South tries to break away and breaks away, Lincoln goes to war against them to keep them as part of the United States of America. And Lincoln is instrumental in that war going on. So the Northerners are shedding blood to keep the South as part of the United States of America. And they say, screw them, let them go. So there was 2 major needs. Keep the 2 Americas, North and South, together. Major need. Get rid of slavery. God used Abraham Lincoln in the job as President of the United States of America. And he, in my opinion, by all historians voting, would come up number 1 of all presidents we've had in the United States of America, by the historians. Now, my point to that being, needs. Bigger the need, bigger the calling in life. What needs are out there? So when you look, and you're basically saying what needs are out there. What needs are out there in society. I'll give you an example of some of the things I see in America. We need daddies and mamas married to each other in the house raising children. Okay? Now, we need that. All right, somebody may see that. How can he go out there and restore marriages that are shaky? Huge need. I believe God would honor that. What other needs are there? People to get and stay sober. Man wants to become a substance abuse counselor after his years of experience. He was a user. He gets sober. He shares with people how to get and stay sober. God would honor that. There's a huge need that's out there. So a lot of times when you look at those needs, what is broken in society? Because remember, the bigger the calling, the bigger the need. So if you go after the bigger need, there's going to be a bigger calling in life. Little bitty needs, I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. Here in Charlotte, do we need another restaurant? Probably not. Do we need another church? Probably not. Here's why. There's 1,000 churches in our county, and I don't know of any right now. Primarily, I'm going to say 90% of them are more than 25%, 30% full on Sunday morning. Not a huge need. Are there needs to help the homeless? Leave behind homelessness. You better believe it. Huge need. Whatever those needs are, the bigger the need, the bigger the calling. The bigger the need, the bigger the job. The job. And that's what we want you to walk into, is what's known as the job. Now, quick review. P equals passions, E equals experiences, T equals talents, and N equals needs. The last 5 minutes or so of this DVD, I want to leave you with how might this unfold in reality? How might this unfold in reality? And I'm going to tell you a story here of the fishing guide. Let's take a man, let's call him John Smith. John Smith works a job after getting out of prison or jail for a while, then another a job, but 2 or 3 years in the process, first 2 or 3 years, he starts working with this, praying on it, thinking about it, talking to other people. He explores his passions. He writes down and comes to the point that he's only got a couple of major passions, and I'm keeping it simple here. But his passions are he loves to fish. He's fished. He's now 40 years old. He's fished since he could remember. 3 years old, whatever the case may be. And he's done a lot of fishing. He knows fish. He knows bass. He knows brim. He knows all types of fishing on the local lakes here in the Carolinas. He knows all about fishing. He's a great fisherman. He has a passion for fishing. Another passion that he has is to help people. Simply help people solve life's major problems. So we got 2 passions there. Fish, help people solve major problems. His experiences are these. He's fished a ton, like we just talked about, and he's tried to help people and found it to be frustrating that he doesn't know how to get them plugged in with the help they've got on those major life issues. Their marriage busting up, kids doing drugs, alcohol, whatever the case may be, those major life issues that face a lot of people. What are his talents? In this case, they happen to overlap his passions. He is a talented fisherman, no doubt about it. He's got a talent, he knows how to fish. He can make a living fishing if he wants to, easy. Another talent he has is he's able to get under the hood and figure out, here's a problem, here's how we can solve it. And I'm using under the hood figuratively, not literally. That means, I'm not talking about being a mechanic. I'm just basically saying he can get into things and he'll see something that's broken and then he can kind of help with how do you help that or how do you solve that, how do you fix that. So there was his P-E-T and then N. What he realizes? There's a huge need out there for men in particular to have relaxation, get away from this busy work world, but more importantly, a need to get plugged into other sources that can help them with major life problems. Aha! And so what he does is he formulates through all of this, and over a period of 2 or 5 years, he comes up with this plan. He sees himself at the end of this plan being a fishing guide, and we're going to make it Lake Norman since I'm probably only 3 or 4 miles as the crow flies from Lake Norman here in the Charlotte area of North Carolina. He sees himself being a fishing guide, making money, making a living, fishing, leading people as a fishing guide, but the deal is, it's not just to be a fishing guide. Here's what else he sees. One man joins him as a fishing guide, and he basically, they're sitting there fishing, it's slow for about an hour, and he says, so tell me, Bill, how's life going? Now, Bill's going to be one of 2 type of people. He's going to either be one of those, let's shut up and fish. He's not going to say that, but he's going to be going kind of like, fine. And he's basically sent the message, I don't want to sit here and chit-chat. I'm just enjoying the quietness of fishing. John Smith over here, on the other hand, he's going to realize, well, I just going to be his fishing guide. He's very closed off. He's very prideful. It's all about, I'll close off, I'm the man. I don't need anything from you. That's okay. We'll let God deal with him. But in the meantime, John Smith makes money from Bill as a fishing guide. Now, he knows how to fish left and right, Lake Norman. And then, of course, we got another man over here. We'll call him Bob. He fishes with John Smith. Things are going slow for an hour. John Smith says, Bob, how's life going? Bob goes, oh man, it's been tough lately. Me and the wife are having a ton of problems. I sure wish we could get things together in our marriage and go back to like we used to be when we first got married 7 years ago. Now, what John Smith realizes is next he would be able to present some options to Bob on how to get help to save his marriage. And he strategically realizes, I'm going to need to know certain things that are going to keep coming up that are broken in society, and how can people plug into help? So he sees himself doing this. And of course, in this situation, what he may have already done was planned out. I know people are going to come with broken marriages or in the process of broken marriages. And there's some good counseling that's out there. He's either going to have no money, poor, or he's going to be probably middle class, or he's going to be rich. If he's poor, let me connect with some Christian churches in the area who do free marital counseling. Hey, Bob, let me tell you about these places. They do free marital counseling because they're serious about patching up. Are you interested? And Bob, yes, sir, I am, if he happens to be no money. If he's middle class, John knows about places that are counseling sessions, say $60 an hour they charge. If he's middle class, he can afford it. If he's super rich, John knows about people who do it for $300 an hour. I think you're starting to get the picture that what John Smith has done, he's combined those two passions, helping people, and he's combined fishing. He became a life guy. But let's say he was working at McDonald's when he got out of prison that first 2 or 3 years. How does he get into the job? Here's probably what it's going to look like. A couple of years down the road, he's gotten grounded. He's got some money coming in. He's been flipping burgers. Not a lot of money, just enough to make it. He's living in a little bedroom apartment somewhere. But what he realizes is this, I'm headed towards the job, and part of what I may have to do is work under somebody else who already does it. He goes up to Lake Norman. He sits there or let's make it another lake. He goes to another lake in the area close by, and he basically looks at the board at a bait shop. And he sees the fishing guides, and he writes down their numbers, and he calls them up, and he tells them about his fishing experience and that he would come to work, and he'd like to do just 1 day a week for free. If the man likes what he's doing, pay me minimum wage for that 1 day a week after 3 or 4 weeks. Just watch what I'll do. I'll be willing to do anything, cut bait, whatever it is. My point is, I want to learn the fishing guide business. I'm a great fisherman. I know all about fishing, but as far as being a fishing guide. He works 3 or 4 weekends on a Saturday, and all of a sudden the fishing guide says, I like this guy. I'm getting it for free, but I ain't going to rip him off. He's doing a good job. He says, hey man, I'll give you the minimum wage, whatever the case is, an hour. And you do this, cut bait, get it ready, get my boat loaded up. And so he starts learning the fishing guide business of what all's involved in it. And eventually what happens is, the owner of that current fishing guide business, he grows in his business. He needs somebody part-time. He says, hey, John Smith, how about if I hire you 20 hours a week? Can you work 20 and still work your 40-hour week at McDonald's? Yes, sir, I think I can. That'd be part-time. So he says, hey, by the way, I'll give you 10 or 12 bucks an hour. Does that sound all right? Yes, sir. Matter of fact, John Smith says, I tell you what, you're considering possibly 12 bucks an hour? How about just 10 bucks an hour? And I learned some of the other things that go on in the fishing guide business, like how do you do tax forms? How do you get capital or loans from a bank? What is a business plan? How did you do yours? Those kind of things. The owner of the fishing guide company, sure, 10 bucks an hour, and I'll spend an hour a week on something peripheral. One of those things that's not just fishing, because you know about fishing, you know what kind of lures we need and blah, 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 how deep to fish, all those technical things about fishing, you know. But it's those other things. How do you do a 941 tax form? How do you get the W-2s? Where do you go get them? For employees, et cetera, so on and so forth. So he works 20 hours a week. He does a good job. Things like this are happening. The main fishing guide leaves and goes because of a death of a grandma down, or let's make it a mother down in Alabama. He has to leave for the last 5 days of a week. He's got a major client coming. He turns it over, hey, John Smith, you've been with me now about 6, 8 months. I believe you can handle this man, take care of him. I got to go to Mama's funeral down in Alabama. Please take care of this client. He's a big client of mine. John Smith takes care of that client while he's gone. Down the line, the owner of that fishing guide business, he grows a little more and he says, you know what, John Smith, I got enough. I can work you 30 hours a week and we'll bump your pay up to $12 an hour. Can you do 30? John Smith says, 30 at 12 is 360 gross a week. I've been making 40 hours at 8 at McDonald's. I don't really need to work 70 hours a week. And he says, bye-bye McDonald's. He gives us 2-week notice. He tells the fishing guy who owns the business, I'm gonna have to give 2 weeks notice to be fair with McDonald's. Fishing guy says, I understand that, by all means do that. Now he's worked into working 30 hours a week at $12 an hour, actually making more than he was making 40 hours a week at McDonald's. What has he just done? He's pretty well into the job. Down the line, 2 or 3 more years, he's ready to break out. But he talks with the owner of the fishing guy because he's been working with him 4 or 5 years. Do you think I'm ready to start my own business? And by the way, I'm not going to start it down here on Lake Wiley where you are, Mr. Owner of Fishing Guide Business. I'll start it up at Lake Norman so I won't be in competition with you. Mr. Fishing Guide Businessman, John Smith, I think you're ready. And by the way, you're going to run into things that you don't know what to do. Give me a call. I'm only a phone call away. 5 years out, he's walked into the job. What did he do for that other part the entire way? He started studying and figuring out and talking to people and asking about what some of those major life things that can go wrong for people, how can they get plugged into help? And he knows the charitable organizations in the area. He knows what government agencies can do something and which ones are so bureaucratically entangled they can't. He avoids them, but he brings the help that is there for the people who's done. Where do we see John Smith at that point in time? He is in the job. So I hope that that paints you a picture. And we've run over a little bit on time, but as I leave you here in this DVD, we've been blessed. Let's go be a blessing.